All right. We are recording the interview of Charles Wallace. This interview is being conducted by Jeremy Tack from the Wright State University Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Wright State University in the New Media Incubator. It is 3:45 p.m. on October 27th, 2017. Charles, or Pete as I'll call you, welcome. Let's start off by telling us where you were born and where you're from.
I was born in Wichita, Kansas.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm from Los Angeles, pretty much. I lived there probably the longest other than here, so about 12 years. My dad's Air Force, so that's why Wichita, Los Angeles, here. Those are all duty stations.
So you mentioned your dad was in the Air Force. What'd your mom do?
Housekeeper.
You have any siblings?
I have an older sister and I have a younger sister.
Any of your family members besides your father in the military?
All of them, pretty much. Yeah, it seems like uncles, cousins, a lot in the Air Force, some in the Navy. Older sister was in the Air Force.
Awesome. So you originally joined the Marine Corps. We'll get to that in a second. What did you do before you joined the Marine Corps?
Before I joined the Marine Corps, I worked at a teaching supply company, and I did shipping and receiving.
Okay. What made your decision to join the Marine Corps?
So family, a lot of military. Dad, military. I always thought I would join. I actually thought I'd always join right out of high school. But one thing led to another, and it wasn't until I was 25. I actually had a break. So that the teaching seminar company went on a hiatus in the summer, like, summer vacation. And I basically needed 3 months to kill. And I thought, like, why not? Why not now? If I could squeeze it in this summer and then come back as a reservist, why not give it a shot? So I went and talked to some recruiters.
All right, so Marine Corps boot camp. Tell us about that. What was it like?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hated it and loved it equally. It was, I was, like I said, I was 25, so I was a little older. Some of the guys come in at 18, never left home, but me, I'd been on my own for years, so I think I had a little easier time. Like, guys be crying on the other side of the squad bay, complaining about. I'm just like, man, just shut up, just do it. In 3 months, we're gonna be gone, so just enjoy everything. So, yeah, I had a really good time.
Is there any instructors that stuck out to you that you still remember?
I remember all of them. Do I remember their names? There was, Staff Sergeant Hutto, who looked like Jack Skellington a little bit with a drill instructor hat. He was awesome, though. He was badass. Sergeant Van, who was about probably 6'5", 6", huge guy, also badass. And then there was Sergeant Gutierrez, who was probably about 5'4", and he was an interesting guy. So yeah.
And what year was this?
This was 2000.
And how long was boot camp?
3 months.
And that was at, did you mention before, was that Paris Island or?
No, I actually, since I lived in LA, I went to MCRD San Diego.
Okay. So after boot camp, where'd you go after that?
After boot camp, I went to, I was with the reserve unit out in March Air Force Base in California. And then from there, we'd meet up there. That's where our home station was, and then we'd bus to Camp Pendleton.
And what did you do in the Marine Corps? What was your job?
I was a tank crewman.
And what led to that decision?
What led to that decision? Well, what led to that decision? Well, actually, I walked in and I took my ASVAB with the Air Force recruiters. And so after I got my scores back, they were trying to push me in towards intel type jobs, and then that just did not sound interesting. I figured if I'm going to do a summer of military, I want some kind of adventure to come out of it. So actually walked out of there with their cards and everything, and walked into the Navy office, talked to them. They were like, oh, well, we can get you in nuclear. And, be like on a submarine. And I was just like, not happening, man. Not interested in that at all. So I went out of that day, out of the Navy office. The last office before the door was the Marine Corps office. Went in, talked to this huge guy. He was like, man, he's like, I'll tell you what, I can only promise you a summer of hell, but when it's over, you get to blow stuff up. And I was like, sign me up, man. And so the only job available was mortarman. And at the time, I didn't know what a great decision it was to not be a mortarman. But so he signed me up for that, and I kind of waited for things to come down, a window to go to boot camp. And it was a few days later, he called me up. He's like, "Hey, we got an opening for tank crewman." And he's like, and what it entails is, I'm like, you know what? I don't even want to know. Just sign me up. Sounds awesome. And then it was probably like maybe a week or two after that phone call, I was gone. I was on the bus. So it happened pretty fast.
When did you go to school for that?
I went to school for that. So 3 months of boot camp. Then you get some leave. You get 10 days off. Then you go to Marine combat training, which is 17 days. It's like an abbreviated infantry, School of Infantry course, which was awesome. And then immediately from that, you get shipped off to your MOS school, which mine was in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and was there for 3 months for that school.
Tell me about that school.
Awesome. It was great. It was like your first kind of taste of like being in the military. And I think they strategically placed it at Fort Knox because right next to us, the barracks behind us, was Army recruit training. So it kind of like just drove home the fact that you're no longer a dirtbag recruit. You're now official dirtbag private. And yeah, it was great. It was freezing. It was wintertime at that point. And I was just learning basic tanking skills, and at the end of it, you get to fire a few main gun rounds and made it all worth it.
Is there any instructors that stand out to you from that school?
There's one. He's Staff Sergeant Peak, I believe his name was, and he was it's probably my height, but equally wide in the shoulders. Massive dude, bald-headed, and he would get so mad, tears would come out of his eyes. He's like, "I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm gonna get pissed, and when I do, tears are gonna come out of my eyes." He's like, "And I'm not. That's not because I'm crying. It's not because I'm sad. It's because I'm holding back, wanting to kill you," which was terrifying. So, but remember, his uniform was immaculate. I mean, always immaculate. And he had to have his sleeves tailored because his arms were that big. And we had these huge, heavy desks. And the first time that happened, we delivered on that promise. He picked up one of those desks, flung it across the room. And if there had been no wall there, that would have been like shot put record. I mean, it was crazy. And then right then, I just remember, he wasn't mad at me personally, just us as a group. And I'm like, I will never, ever piss that guy off. Like, I'm gonna make sure, I'm gonna work really hard not to make that happen. So, but yeah, he was a good guy.
Up until this point, how did you adapt to military life?
I really liked it. Like, I was always a military brat. Always lived on military bases. I mean, I played G.I. Joe and like soldiers with fake guns in the woods with my friends. So I was ready for whatever they had, and I didn't really have too many problems. I would say the only thing I didn't really care for is how much actual training, hands-on training you get, and then how many how to act in the military. Like in the Air Force now is like, you know, your sapper training and your things that you should just probably already know at that point. But I have to sit in the class and listen to it, and I wasn't ready for that. I actually hated that. I still hate that. I get it. Some people need it. I don't think I do. So, yeah, that was actually a little disappointing to learn how much of it was not political, but you know what I mean? Like, just, yeah, I don't know. Teaching you things you should probably have learned at home.
So at this point, you've done boot camp. You did what was the second school?
MCT, Marine Combat Training.
What was that like?
It was sweet. It was 17 days. It was a little like boot camp in the sense yes, you've graduated, you're a Marine now, but you're still in that like early recruit phase. So they're constantly on your back. But it was a blast. That's when you learn a lot of your field craft, a lot of weapons, heavy weapons, like things like probing for mines, like things you don't learn any place other than MCT. So yeah, it was awesome. It was like no showers, MREs every day, very little sleep. Everybody stunk. Everybody sweaty. It was really hot, California at the time. Yeah, and that's when you kind of started to see like personalities, because everyone had a personality in boot camp, but you could actually see people interacting, like, oh, that guy's definitely gonna die, or he's gonna get his ass beat every day. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
So your unit was in California?
Unit was in California. Yeah.
And you were in the reserves.
Right.
So what was, would you just do the weekend warrior thing, or just once a month, or what was it like then?
Well, it was it was the same thing, same as traditional reservists. So 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. But I had an opportunity to volunteer to work down at the tank rep at Camp Pendleton on active duty orders for a while, and that was cool. That was actually my only real taste of what day-to-day Marine Corps life was like. But yeah, it was when I was in California, that's how it was. Later, when I moved here to Ohio and then transferred units to a unit back in Kentucky, the same area where I went to tank school, and that was way different tempo, because that was like Iraq War was kind of starting to pick up right after September 11th, and so training tempo went way up, and we'd be there like Thursday through Sunday sometimes, and then we'd show up, at 5 or 6 o'clock, and then we wouldn't sleep hardly until 10 o'clock at night on Sunday. So, yeah, definitely much different than the Air Force Reserve life.
So yeah, what was a typical drill weekend like in the Marine Corps?
Typical drill weekend. So like in Kentucky, we'd show up at 5 o'clock. Immediate formation, accountability. We get any instructions passed. Then we would turn to go prep our vehicles to march out to the field. We'd stay out there. We either maneuver or we'd shoot, or both. We'd have MREs, a lot of MREs. Every now and then we'd have hot meals brought out from the chow hall. You'd have fire watch every night, so everybody would be doing a couple-hour watch through the night. Maybe 4 to 6 hours for sleep. I seem to remember it'll always be freezing cold, even though it was in the summer sometimes. But a lot of rocks, walking on rocks a lot, so your feet always hurt. But yeah, we get a lot of like trigger time on weapons and stuff, so it was worth it.
So this time in between, I know you went on deployment to Iraq, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But this time in between then, from leaving training and then being in the reserves, what did you do as a civilian?
Let's see. So I first got out. I immediately got a job as a security guard at some random like business complex or something, and it was pretty stupid. I stood in a booth and like I checked people coming in and out of this little. It was like an industrial complex basically for like a lot of internet startup companies, stuff like that. So I did that for about a month, and then I had a buddy of mine who was taking classes at Long Beach for film, and he had a friend who was looking for someone to fill a spot at his job. So my buddy was he didn't want to give up his job at Blockbuster Video, so he passed it on to me, and so I went and I met with them, and it turned out to be a cameraman for a TV production company downtown Hollywood. So talked to him on the phone. I'd known that guy too a little bit, so he's like, yeah, sure, Wallace, bring him on. And so I went down there, and it turned out to be a company. They did a lot of reality shows. They did like Blind Date, the TV show, a show called like Fifth Wheel, all these like reality dating type shows. Rendezvous was one. And so I basically did the opposite of what you're doing right now. Is I would sit on the other side of the camera. I'd take care of all the technical stuff, and there'd be a producer just like yourself sitting in a chair, and then they'd bring people in and interview them and see and try to match them up for the TV shows.
Cool. All right, so you went on deployment to Iraq. Start talking about that. When were you first notified about that?
I was first notified, I think it was January I want to say 3rd or 4th of 2003.
Okay. And what was that like getting the word that you were going to Iraq? Or did you know you were going to Iraq at the time? You just know you...
Yeah, we knew. We knew pretty much that was where we're going to go. So what was it like? I don't remember it being any huge shock. I just remember being kind of, it was what it was. And we were like we said, we were kind of training up, so everyone was kind of had the feeling we'd be going somewhere.
What'd your friends' family think about it?
They all took it pretty well. I mean, they didn't really say much as far as there was no like wailing or anything, or they, my baby's gonna die or something. There's nothing like that. But yeah, everyone was just really cool about it, really supportive, and that was everyone's still on that like 9/11 high of let's go kill all the terrorists, and so I mean, of course, my parents were concerned, sisters, but yeah, I don't really get too much negative response to it at all.
Was there any ramp up in training before then?
Oh, it was a little bit of ramp up, but we didn't know we were gonna, it was gonna come. So we got the notice on like the 3rd or 4th, and we were gone on the 10th. So we had like a few days to get everything in order.
So tell me about getting over there. What was that like?
It sucked. So January, and it only sucked because like my people are not of the sea. So we wound up taking boats over there, and it was like a good week and a half of just green throwing up everywhere. It was horrible. So we actually got bussed out to Virginia. Help me here.
Norfolk.
Yeah, and we took LCACs out to these landing ships, and they packed us in like sardines in these little rooms, and we actually spent, I think, about 4 or 5 weeks sailing to the Gulf. So,
And you got off in is it Kuwait?
we got off in Kuwait.
How was that?
It was great. So it was see, as every day went, it started to get a little more tense. Everyone was like gung ho, and then you had a lot of time to think on the ship, and then we had this platoon sergeant is daily telling us like we're gonna get gassed and killed, and like a third of you will be dead and all this stuff. So anyway, we take LCACs back off the ship, land in Kuwait, and it's not like a huge mass thing. It was like 1 LCAC and 1 tank. So it was my tank crew and the LCAC crew. Was it? We pull up on this beach, and the thing powers down, and we lower the ramp, and we start guiding the tank off, and I see the gunner of my tank, and he's got his M9 out, and he's straight up patrolling, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh. So I take mine out and chamber around. I'm like, like clearing bushes and stuff. And so we get a little bit down the way, and we're like, wait, what the fuck? And we had landed on basically the naval base. So we thought Al Qaeda was gonna drop from the trees, man. It was crazy, and everyone was just like, what are you doing? So we just like put it back in our holster and kept on going. But yeah.
How long were you in Kuwait?
We were in Kuwait for about a month. We were there that whole build-up, like before the actual war kicked off. 2 months before that, basically, was when we left. So we about a month on the ship, about a month in Kuwait. We got there, and it was desert. We got there, it was nothing. They had pushed up berms in about I think it was like a kilometer square, kilometer, not a kilometer, but anyway, little square berms. And they'd popped up all over. In the desert there, these little camps. So we were at Camp Shoop, and it was our vehicles in line, and that was it. So gradually over the month, they built it up. They put up like a tent for the chow hall, and they put up GP tents. But I mean, that was it. It was porta potties. There were like 12 porta potties directly upwind from our tent, so it was funny because passing through on the way back, it was like there was like flooring and air conditioning and like movie theater and stuff, or like a place they could sit and watch movies. And we did not get any of that. And so, in fact, the very last day before we actually left, they brought in showers, portable showers. That was the first time since we got off the ship we actually got to get clean.
So what did you guys do while you were in Kuwait?
Hung out. Well, at first we had a very, very tightly packed training schedule, which disappeared probably like the 4th day. Because you can only set up camo nets over your tank so many times, and you're like, we get it. It's not that hard. I mean, the sun would set at like, 5 or 6 o'clock. This is winter time over there, and it would get freezing. It'd be over 100 in the day. It would be, ice on your tank in the morning. So once it got to be, sun went down, we didn't have lights. There's nothing. We had flashlights. So we just kind of look at each other and be like, well, I guess we're going to sleep now. So we slept for like 12 hours. It was pretty sweet. And this you had fire watch, which is cool because then you just get up, walk out, make some hot chocolate, and talk to your buddies, and then go back to sleep.
So when and how did they notify you that it was time to leave Kuwait and head to Iraq?
The first time, or when it actually happened? Because there was like 4 times. So one day they're like, all right, mount up, get everything ready to go. Final checks, stack your vehicles, and we're gonna push out to Kuwait. We're gonna die. A third of you are gonna be dead. You're gonna be gassed. You know what I mean? It was crazy. So if you remember at the time, there was kind of like a lot of back and forth between Saddam Hussein and George Bush, and we stopped and started like 3 or 4 times. So when it actually happened, it was like, sure, we're probably not going anywhere. So we got all lined up, and just sure enough moved to the next assembly area, which is like right at the little frontier there. And I knew it was real that time because we had road marched for hours, and we were just exhausted. And tanks don't go that fast, So it was well into the early morning when we finally got there. And they're like, all right, lay down. You're probably gonna get a couple hours of sleep, and that's it. We're moving out pretty early. So we laid down, put our bags out, and then all of a sudden there's like this whole just battalion of MLRS, the rocket launchers, and it would just be like, doom, 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 just launching constantly, and it lit the sky up. So we're like, well, guess we're not sleeping at all. There's no way. But that was my first indication that it actually started. Was they're clearly launching rockets at these guys. So
at any time before that, did you think like, well, we might not go, or we're just going to be sitting here
all the time, because rumor mill's going 1,000 miles an hour. So it's like, they're saying this in Washington, now they're not saying they found this, and so you never really knew. So, and I was a Lance Corporal at the time, so I knew even less than most people as far as like what was happening above me. So yeah, we're like, at that point though, we're just like, whatever, man, let's just do something.
So when you finally were rolling out, like, what was the feeling like?
It's crazy. It's nothing like it. Everyone was it just amped up, and I don't know if you've been around Marines, but like they're very, very gung ho, and they just can't wait to kill stuff and blow things up, and that's very real. It's a very real feeling. I felt it too. And I was like, let's just go, man. Like we're the most badass creatures on this planet, and nothing's gonna stop us. And so we were just waiting. I'm up there I was a loader, so I had a little station on top of the tank with a machine gun, and I'm every building. I'm like, come on, I know you're there, man. And we're still in the Kuwait at this point. I mean, at this point we crossed over, but we were like, no, nothing's biased that we need to shoot, but we were really hoping there would be.
So walk me through the roles of the different positions on a tank and how to operate one of these.
Yeah, so you start at the bottom. Literally, you start at the bottom. There's you're the driver, usually, and so you have your crew that sits in the turret, and then your driver is by himself in the driver's hole, which is in the front of the tank, and it's basically a reclining chair. You lay back, and if your tank's buttoned up, you're looking up through periscope, so you're looking at the world through mirrors, or if it's nighttime, you have a little thermal viewer, and it's pretty hot. But you're completely in charge of like moving the tank forward and backwards. And once you graduate from that, you go to the loader, which is what I was. And that's a guy, you actually take the main gun rounds out of the little rack in the back, spin it around, put it into the breech, and arm the gun. And you're also responsible for the comms. You have a 240 mounted on top. And you're basically like, you are the you're not the low man, but the only reason the driver doesn't go out and do like little chores is because it's so hard to get in and out. So that falls on the loader. If you have to get something from another tank or you have to pass a message, like you're up and down constantly. But it's a great place to see another country from, because once you're moving, you really don't have to do too much. You just enjoy the scenery. Then you go to the gunner, which is sort of crammed down a little hole, and you operate the main gun. You operate the machine gun that's mounted alongside of the main gun. And then from there you go to the tank commander. So basically you're just in charge of the tank. You've got a 50 cal on top, and if need be, you can actually control the main gun from your station. But yeah, so it usually it's like sergeant-ish or NCO position to be a tank commander. So when you first come out of tank school, you're probably going to be a driver. Work your way up.
What's the best job of all those?
Loader, baby. No, a tank commander, hands down, because you're responsible for the tank. And so I wasn't a tank commander when I was in Iraq, but coming back, obviously I made my way up, and yeah, it's hands down the best. You're just in charge of an entire 70-ton killing machine. It's awesome.
So you're a loader in this tank crew. You've just left Kuwait. You're headed towards Iraq. Tell me about this.
So, okay, well, you know what? I had a unique experience in that so we're heading out. We're pushing out. It's an entire MAGTF, or a entire battalion of Marines. So, 1,000 people. We're the only tanks. There's 12 of us. Supposed to be 14. We had to leave behind. But there's like Amtraks, a whole log train of Humvees, and 7-ton trucks and stuff like that. So we're coming out. We're just pushing across the desert. The Iraqis had laid mines out. I guess they didn't have time to bury them, or they just didn't. But they were just like sort of scattered out throughout the desert. And at one point, we're going through, and there's like just herds of camels everywhere running around. So I just remember looking at this like pack of camels, and all of a sudden there's like a berm, and it felt like a BMX jump. So I thought we hit a mine. I didn't know what happened. So our tank goes up, gets air, and noses into the ground. And so everything on the tank is sharp and hard. And so I get thrown forward. My hatch comes flying, hits on my back. All the gear we have in the rack on the turret comes flying up like a little rainbow arc, lands right on top of me and the tank commander. And I thought I broke my arm. So I had, from that point on, I was crawling up and down the tank with one arm. And I'm trying to load like in the crook. And because I don't want to tell anybody, because if I get pulled off the tank, I'm stuck in the log train. And like I could just see the RPG coming right at me, blowing me and all the other guys that didn't have a spot up. And I was like, the safest place to be is on the tank. The only chance I'm gonna get any kind of action would be on our tank with our group. So I didn't say anything. So the whole time, man, I felt like right here and here felt like I'd broken it. And that probably took like a few weeks before I could even like kind of bend my arm. But even worse was it, we had this like a torsion bar in the front that provides, it keeps the track from falling off because it keeps it tight. And we bent it in half, almost snapped it. So the entire time, tank commander's trying to nurse it so we don't bust it. Because if we bust it, we're dead. We'll be sitting duck. At least that's what we thought. So we were the lame duck of the platoon. We were already the platoon sergeant's wingman, which is the lowest of the tank. Your platoon commander, his wingman, and then platoon sergeant, his wingman. That was us. So it was tense. It was at any moment we thought things were going to snap. We're going to get left behind, get an RPG in the back, and we're done.
So at this point, how long did it take before you got into or saw any action in Iraq?
It was a couple of days. It was pretty quick. So we came up on this town, Nasiriyah. It's in the southern Iraq, and our job as the entire battalion, our job was to secure 2 bridges. One was over the Tigris, one was over the Euphrates. In the middle, there's the city and like a stretch of highway, and that was going to be the main route for the forces going to Baghdad. So they're like, It's a chump mission. You're just going to secure these bridges. There's nobody. They've all pulled out or they've capitulated, somewhere. And that was not the case. As it turns out, they had dug in. There's like Iraqi regular army. There's like their or the Iraqi National Guard, like Fedayeen guys were there. And it was tense. So I remember coming up, as we came across the city, we had that first bridge, the city's coming up in the distance. And we had pulled over the side of the road to refuel before we actually went in to secure these bridges. And you see coming over this a bridge, it's like a highway, so it was like a few lanes, 3 or 4 lanes on each side. And you see these vehicles, a convoy coming up. And so I remember picking up my binos, I'm looking through, I'm like, those are American vehicles. So as I got a little closer, I'm looking and there's like wheels wobbling, there's like bullet holes in the windows, and they pull up, maybe, a couple hundred yards ahead of us. And then the call on the radio was like, go, push up, go, go, go. So we all jump on, fired up, and we push past them. We're flying past this convoy of it's like a Humvee and a couple trucks. And they were all shot up, blood everywhere. So this convoy had stopped and guys had jumped out. And then when they jumped out, some of them had just fallen out. There was gear all over the road, and they had pulled over, or they had run over and gotten in a ditch. We had no idea what's going on at this point. So we pushed past them, and then it was this like all-out assault on the city. Tanks are online, CAT team is online, so it was like Humvees that had like 50 cals, tow missiles, Mark 19s, and they're all doing their thing. We're doing our thing. They've got Cobras, Harriers, F-18s. It was nuts. It was, and we had a pretty good spot from where we were because we had a pretty good standoff, so you could watch all this unfold. So eventually we got the call to pull back, refuel, and we're going to go into the city. So we pull back and get everything going, and we push forward. So we're going through, and they're like, just get through a certain point. So we pass the original convoy. We're over the bridge, and there's like dudes everywhere, and technical vehicles popping out every now and then. So we pass this convoy, is the rest of that convoy, and there was like a refueler just engulfed in flames. Humvee slammed in the back of that. There's a wrecker off somewhere, and still no idea what's going on. And that's when it was like, this is real. Like, this is a real thing. So, and we didn't know it at the time. And even we actually did the rest of our deployment and didn't know anything until we came back. And it was the Army's 507th Maintenance Company that Jessica Lynch was a part of, had taken a wrong turn, got separated from the convoy, and was coming back through where the enemy had set up their defensive perimeter from the back, and they just got annihilated. So yeah, that was crazy, man. So we actually split up with, so we had that whole stretch of roads called the Ambush Alley now, but they were afraid we were going to be, they were set up waiting for us. So someone, I don't know who gave a command, to take a right. Right off of the highway, and we're gonna skirt that ambush alley, come out at the end, and take that far bridge. That did not happen. So we turned on this back alley in Nasiriyah, and we're in like the hood of Nasiriyah anyway, and which is hard to tell because a lot of it looks, on the outskirts anyway, it looks a little rough. So turns out that area was where sewage was kind of pumped and just let run free. And it had made this like a prehistoric like ooze underneath this like crust of mud, which does not support tanks whatsoever. So like 4 tanks, a Humvee, a tank recovery vehicle, all got bogged down. I mean, stuck in this nasty mud. So that was like the rest of our day, and this is all the same day. The rest of our day was spent trying to get our tanks out, and then one tank would they'd pull it out and it would go 20 yards and sink right again. It was horrible. So Yeah, we actually had to abandon one of those recovery vehicles, abandon a Humvee. I think abandoned an Amtrak. We actually came back a couple of days later, and they were just stripped to the bone, man. It was just frame. That was it. No nuts, bolts, nothing. They had taken it all. Yeah, that was the first kind of push into any kind of combat.
Well, what came after that? Did you get the tanks unstuck? Did you push on through the city, or?
Yeah, push on through the city, and what would happen was we had pulled the tanks back to refuel, and at that point they're like, no, there's Americans in there. We need to send some kind of support. So they had sent the Amtraks in ahead of us, which Amtraks are, they're pretty rugged. There's Mark 19 and 50 cal plus a squad of Marines. So, but send them in unsupported by tanks is not a great idea, or air. So they pulled the tanks back to refuel. And then it turned out that they had sent some onto the objective, the other side of the bridge. So they were dug in over there also, and they are just getting torn up. So we got that call too, like, hey, we need to get these tanks to the other side and give them some support. So the tanks that were not stuck went that way. But before that happened, they managed to take out a couple of those Amtraks. And unfortunately, the forward air controller that was with our team was unaware that there was any Marine assets on that side of the bridge. He got, he's basically cleared the air support to take anything out on that side. And there was a couple Air National Guard A-10s that wound up shooting up one of those Amtraks. So, which is crazy, man, because later on that day we were passing through and there's all these tracks just white, because they'd been hit by these A-10s and just burst into flames.
So at any point in time did you get to fire the tank off?
Oh yeah. I fired everything on that tank except my M9. So yeah, good times. There was one time we were later, it was a couple days later, because we secured that area. That was kind of our big AOR. So we secured, it branched off, and there was like a military compound on the other side of the city. There was a training compound a little further down in the city. So it was a lot of military presence. So we had secured one of those compounds and one of the roads. And one time, a gunner was outside the tank, and I was inside on security, and there's a car coming down the road. So this time they were, they're trying to sneak past, which I think probably successfully a couple times, but sneak soldiers back into the city through the lines. So they're like, hey, there's this car. It's going around. It's dropping people off, dropping off mortar teams, and if you see it, take it out. It's a distinctive car. It's like a whitish car, but it's got like orange panels on the fenders. This guy's been running all over the place, dropping off teams. So and basically, there's like anything at this point, anything that came down the road was, was considered a threat. So I just happened to be in the gunner's seat at the time. My gunner's like, just go for it, man. You know what to do. So he let me fire the main gun. Turns out, funny story is like every other car in Iraq is white with orange panels. That's what taxis are there. So we did not know that. Nobody knew that. So yeah, that's pretty crazy.
So at this point in time, what's going through your mind? What are you thinking up to this point?
As far as like my opinion on it, or just how I felt, like was I scared?
Yeah.
I will say, actually, I don't really know. I mean, I was just doing what I was there to do, basically, and I was like, I wasn't really scared. I would say, my tank was the ones that got stuck. So we hit the mud and sunk, and we were spinning, and in like it could have been an hour, it could have been 5 seconds. I don't know the difference, but I was terrified. I mean, my mouth felt like battery acid. I could feel the blood moving in my body, and it took a few seconds. It felt like slow-mo a little bit, and once I kind of got back up, I never really felt that again. So I mean, you're scared all the time, 'cause you just don't know what's going to happen. But that was the only time I was like, I'm going to crap my pants right now. Like I might die, because I could just see someone dropping a grenade right on top of us in the tank, and we're all dead. So, but yeah, after that, it was just, I mean, I wasn't really anything other than hot. I remember being hot and sweaty and tired, and that's really about it.
Well, what did you guys eat when you were out there?
MREs.
MREs.
Months and months of MREs. One time, there's some really nice company, I think it was in Florida, had saved money and they bought these packs. They're on like styrofoam trays wrapped in cellophane. It was like a little ham sandwich, you know, like a picnic lunch, really nice. And it was the best, it was magical. So, and this is, even in Kuwait, until they got that chow hall set up, is MREs. We had maybe a couple weeks of hot meals. So we're all plugged up. And they sent these lunch trays basically, and it was the best thing I've ever tasted. And it was like not an hour later, everyone's just like, whoa. It's like Marines are just jumping in the bushes. I'm like, you spend hours, you know, cleaning yourself out because we just weren't used to it, having like actual food. So, but yeah, after that, everyone's like, screw that, man. Just MREs until we're back in a better place. Yeah, that was it though.
How'd you stay clean? Chance to take any showers or?
No, never. You could have, because you have a 5-gallon water jug, you know. But and we were getting bottled water. There's just boxes of bottled water everywhere. But there's just never really a great time. You know, like what's the point? I'm gonna be sweaty in 5 minutes. Our platoon sergeant would be just, he'd get that 5-gallon can and tilt it over the bustle rack, open it up, and it'd be like a hot shower. So water sitting out in the sun. He'd just be out there just butt naked, just not a care in the world, country boy. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm good, man. There's like CNNs over there, Foxes over there. Like, I don't want to see my junk.
So at this point in time, was your did you move any further into Iraq, or did you mostly stay at the city?
We were all over the place. So so Nasiriyah, we were relieved by another group, and then it was basically we were all over. We'd road march, you know, all day, and then we'd stop at a place and we'd go to another place. That was the only Nasiriyah was probably I think about 10 days or so. But that was the only real action we got was that, and so we'd support other things, and we had chased I don't know his real name, but his Chemical Ali was at the time, was like, he was out there somewhere with this huge force. And any minute now he's going to find us or we're going to find him. And we saw some tanks, like capitulated tanks here and there, but not the huge army we were searching for. So, I mean, I couldn't even tell you. I think we came about 40 miles of Baghdad. So that's the furthest we went into Iraq.
And you're doing this in your entire deployment?
Yeah, after that, it was everywhere. It was maybe a couple days in one place, but yeah, not long.
Were you resupplied by, how did that work?
Yeah, it was I mean, there was a constant, at this point, you know, as we moved up and that route was secure, is constant. Like, we never wanted for like food or water or fuel or ammo, nothing. So.
What was life like amongst the Marines? Did you guys get on each other's nerves after a while, or? Constantly. So it's weird because you're in that situation. It's one of those things that you can't teach in school. Is like, so we had our crew of 4, and one of my best buddies was on. We were his tank's wingman. So I mean, and he was probably 200 yards away, and I didn't talk to him for like 4 days. You know what I mean? So it's us 4 in that tank, and every now and then you'd get, you know, somebody would come up and talk to you, or we had like a squad of Marines. That was with us a lot, and we talked to those guys. But yeah, you just kind of like find your own little place, and there was like books, a lot of books. So that was like the great escape, was just sit there with a book if you had time. Was there anything else you did for pass the free time? Did you have any opportunity to do like play games or? Games?
No, not at all, man. There's always something, and that time too is I mean, that was the war. You know, it was like at any minute. You're going to get mortared or RPG'd or something. So,
yeah. Did you have any opportunity to like, contact family and friends back at home?
Once. So we were getting ready to push out for real, and I was like, man, I need to call home. So I went to this guy. I think he was for CNN. He was a reporter there because they had their own little press tent, and I was like, man, I'll give you $20 for 10 minutes on that cell phone. He had like this huge SATCOM phone. He's like, make it 5 minutes and it's free. I was like, done. So yeah, that was really cool. And other than that, not really. Like mail, we got very sporadically. In fact, we were getting ready to get back on the ship, and 2 tour buses pulled up, and they were just jam-packed with mail from the entire time we were there, like care packages, and so it was a party, man. It was like everyone had like candy, and we had this huge pile of hygiene products. We're like, we don't even need it now, man. So that was pretty much our only contact, was the very beginning and the very end.
What was the length of time that you were in Iraq?
It was about 2 months. So it was like a month on the ship each way, in Kuwait, and then in our actual Iraq. So.
And then you went back to Kuwait?
Yeah, back through Kuwait, and then spent a few days like turning in gear, or cleaning your gear, and then back on the boat.
When they told you you were going back to Kuwait, were you relieved, or what was the feeling like then?
Yeah, I mean, because we were all kind of tired of being there, and I think the constant like road marching to nothing started to wear on us. Everyone's like, "What are we even doing here?" So yeah, it was good to get back to Kuwait. Although I think if they had been like, "We're going to go here to serve this purpose," I think everyone would have been fine with that too. But just constantly chasing ghosts everyone was just, they had it with it.
So how long were you in Kuwait before you guys left?
A few weeks maybe.
Do you think you might be going back out again, or?
Oh yeah, they told us. Well, they told us that constantly. You're like, there's a chance we could get sent back out, and but then I'm not sure how it all works, but I think we're required to be back at a certain point. Like our rotation was already like pre-planned for us, so it didn't matter. We were going to be back when it was time to be back. So.
Then you just got back on the ships again and head back. So what was it like coming back home from that deployment?
It was good. I think everybody, still positive, and that was the early part of the war. So I think people just weren't used to that. So it was really exciting, and everyone was in support of it for the most part. So people had a lot of questions, and they wanted to hear everything. And yeah, like, I wonder what it'd be like now to come back, after we've been there for so many years. Yeah, everyone was just really excited about it.
Did you go back to civilian life right away, or did you?
Yeah.
And how'd you readjust?
Very easily. I was sleeping in till like 10, like on the third day. It was no problem. Yeah, I liked it like going to summer camp and you come back and everything's a little weird, but you just kind of adjusted. So I mean, it was strange. I did. I wouldn't say I had trouble adjusting some, but it was definitely my outlook on civilian life had changed a little bit by coming back.
How so?
It was just everything seemed a little less. Or the things I'd done before, I would just sit there and be like, "Why would I do that? Like, what was the point? What would the outcome be if I did that?"
And then, so you went back to just doing the reserves and drill weekends. How long did you do that before you got out of the Marine Corps?
So that was in 2003. I got out in 2006.
Okay.
And then I transferred to the Ready Reserve, and I stayed there for 4 years, but not doing anything, growing a beard. Yeah, I was fine with that. And then I just fell off the contract in 2010.
And then you eventually joined the Air Force.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. What led to that decision?
So during that time, the IRR, I'd actually put a package in to go to Marine Corps Intel School. And I wasn't sure if that's really what I wanted to do. So I let that expire. And then in 2014-ish, I missed it. Like just being a part of the fold was something that was really important to me. And I didn't like being a civilian, or just a civilian, and so I actually went to a Marine recruiter to talk to him, see if they had any opportunities. I still wanted to do intel, but he was kind of just like, you know what, man, I'm gonna be honest with you. He's like, you're a little too old for what we're looking for right now. So I don't remember how. I think I just called Air Force recruiter. Just to see, because my window was closing pretty good. If they said no, I wasn't sure about the other branches, so I called Air Force recruiter, and he was like, "Yeah, man, like we've got a lot of stuff out here at Wright Pat. you might be interested in. And then he connected me with Chief Master Sergeant of a squadron at Wright Pat, and I signed on.
What's it like serving in the Marine Corps and then going from the Marine Corps to the Air Force? It's a huge cultural shift. Tell me about that.
So, yeah, it's a huge cultural shift, and there's good and bad. The Marine Corps is like, if you're not in the cult, man, like you're not gonna get it. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like you have to experience it, I think, to fully appreciate it, and it's a lot more aggressive. You know, it definitely attracts to alpha males, or more alpha males, I would say. Air Force is a lot more squishy, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just different. It's good in its own way. Air Force is a little more cerebral, and again, like I only have my experience to compare the two, but that is how it seems. It's like a little more concerned with the individual and their progress and their career. Where the Marine Corps is like, if you're not on board with the team, then you don't belong here.
What kind of training did you have to do with the Air Force? Did you have to go back to boot camp?
Did not have to go back to boot camp, fortunately, thank God. Benefit of being in the Marines is if you've done Marine Corps boot camp, you can go to any branch and you're good. So I had to go to tech school for the job, which was 6 months in Texas. 6 months at an AETC base, which is experience in and of itself, which is another difference, which fortunately I didn't have to live through, but I got to witness, is the culture of a Marine Corps recruit versus an Air Force recruit. Very different. Like a Marine Corps recruit does not run the show. Air Force recruit, he kind of has them by the balls, for lack of a better term. And a lot more care and attention is given to the feelings and hopes and dreams of the Air Force recruit. I don't even think you can call them recruit. I think you have to call them airmen. But yeah, Marine, they don't care. Just.
So what was it like being a prior service Marine in Air Force Tech School?
It wasn't terrible. I think because I'm a little older, so I'm not in that same mindset that I was. I couldn't get back there if I wanted to, I don't think. So, I mean, I do appreciate those aspects of the Air Force that are different. But yeah, I would say frustrating at times. Because in the same situation, a Marine NCO, for example, would just simply choke somebody out. You know, what I mean, out of the view of their, chain of command, and it'd be fine. And it's just kind of how it is. And here's like you can't even tell them to shut up. You say the word "shut up," and like you could get a talking to. Like you can get in trouble for that.
How did you like the tech school?
Like the actual training
the
itself?
actual curriculum.
Yeah, it was okay. It was the career field I chose is kind of like a catch-all for a lot of different intel disciplines. So you kind of get a little snippet of everything, which is great. I think it's a good like a sampler platter of the intel world. I think if I had to do it again, or if I do something in the future, I'd probably choose a discipline that's a little more focused in one area. But
is there any instructors in your Air Force Tech School that stood out to you?
Yes, there is one.
Can you tell me about him?
So I can't remember his name. I can, but I'm not gonna say it. He was really into My Little Ponies, and he was just an odd character. Nothing wrong with My Little Ponies, but if you're a 30-year-old male in the Air Force, I think there is something wrong with My Little Pony. But yeah, this is a character, and I just remember being like, this guy's in charge of me, man. Like, where have I gone wrong in my life? How could I have made a better choice? But yeah, other than that, everyone was great. I mean, and it's a weird culture now, because like I said, you can't. They couldn't. If you saw them out in town, you couldn't even talk to them. It's just bizarre. So
after tech school, you went back to your unit in Wright Pat.
Yeah.
What's that been like?
It's been one of the single best career moves of my life. I had a blast. I learned so much, and so I got the opportunity to go on orders with the active duty squadron we're with, and it's like is a fire hose of the actual intel world. And even though, I'm an acquisition side, and so on like the sexy scale, James Bond is on one end and I'm all the way on the other. But if it's your thing, and it kind of is my thing. Like you can definitely find a way to enjoy it, and I've had a blast doing it.
So it's been a good decision.
Definitely.
At this point in time, what do you look forward to in the Air Force moving forward?
Well, so I have a deployment coming up. I'm going to, I'll be working with AFRICOM, and I think it's going to be the best/worst time of my life. I asked for a deployment. When they came down, I asked, I will take the dirtiest, smelliest, crappiest one, and they delivered on that. So had I do it again, I may have made another decision, but I think it's gonna be a great experience, and then I think it's gonna open up my eyes as to what opportunities I can do out there. And as a reservist, I feel like I can kind of write my own ticket to how I spend my time and where I get to go, depending on what's available. So.
Being a reservist in the Air Force, being a reservist in the Marine Corps, how do the two drill weekends or duties compare?
So if you're there past 4:30 in the Air Force, something's wrong. That's acquisition emergency. Like we need to order some pencils. You know what I mean? That's the emergency. So in the Marine Corps, it was. We would have. So even after we got back, drill weekends got to be almost drill half weeks. We'd show up on Wednesday or Thursday, depending, and sometimes we did a couple in the same month. Air Force, that would never happen. It's very common. It's very 9 to 5.
So it's been sounds like a very interesting career you've had in the military. Very unique, going from the Marine Corps to going from tanks in the Marine Corps to intel in the Air Force. Looking back on your military service, how has it changed or affected your life?
Wow. I think it the biggest thing it's done is scratch. It's a huge itch that I've always had. I knew I would do it when I was a kid. I'm not sure how the timeline played itself out. Never would have seen that coming. But had I not done it, I think I would have been very unsatisfied in my life. So it's definitely one of my best decisions. And I think it has given me a perspective on just my role in this country and as a person, and who gives back and how. And I think this is one of the best ways someone can be a member of a society, is to spend their time, possibly risk their life, in defense of American beliefs, good or bad, whether you agree with them or not. I definitely think everyone should have to do some kind of service, military or civil, to get that sense of belonging and worth of their, I'm a citizen of this country, but it's not handed to me. I need to do something to earn that or give something back. So,
If someone was coming to you to ask about advice about what branch of service to join,
United States Marine Corps, man.
So, wrapping things up here, what message would you like to leave for future generations that might be watching this interview?
Message to leave for future generations. Man. That's a great question. I don't really know. I felt my where I've come out from my military service is not where I went into it. I definitely went in very selfishly, in a sense. I did it for myself. I felt like I was a patriot, but no great patriot. That wasn't why I did it. I wanted adventure. I wanted some maybe a story to be able to tell. I would say I'm now about 50-50. I do still feel that way, but I do feel like I've been able to take some of my time and, at least, as a gratitude for everything I have. So I would say just if there's something you want to do, just do it. You know what I mean? Like I don't think there's any real wrong reason. Maybe college money, but yeah, I don't think there's any wrong reason to join the military. I'd say just be open, be flexible. If it's going to change you, let it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, is there anything you'd like to add that we didn't talk about?
Yes. One quick story, and this is I like to bring it back down because, yes, I'm a Marine to this day, and will die one, and was one before, and will always be one. And they are the best, most well-disciplined fighting force on the planet. There's no question, and I think you'll agree with that. I'm just kidding. But it's a funny story, and this really kind of put everything in perspective as far as militarily. But going back to that in Iraq was so we had passed that convoy, right? So then pulled on the other side, and we set up. We took all that, and man, we were high on life, and we were like, we are the baddest MFers on the planet. Like, I'll walk down any street in America, I'll kill anybody that looks at me funny. I have the capability. And it was a few days later, and then all of a sudden because we were guarding the perimeter, and then just the entire day, this day, all these Ranger regiments and SEAL teams were coming in, and SAS and Force Recon. And I was like, man, that is perspective. Just when you think you're the baddest dude on the planet, there's a lot of people that are way more badass. And it was really cool to see. But yeah, that let me know that, you know what, man, maybe don't walk down the street trying to be a tough guy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, awesome. Pete, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your service. And that concludes this interview.
Cool, man.